Module 24, the Maruyama Shijio School. I, Dr. Rita Pratap, former head of the Department Drawing and Painting, University of Rajasthan, Jaipur. I am going to speak on the Japanese painting. Maruyama Shijio School's prominence in the Kyoto art world is due to the Higashiyama art exhibition. Okyo and his followers Matsumura Goshun, with their many disciples, combination of talents came to be known as Maruyama Shijio School. Okyo employed a time-honored brush technique called Mokotsu, boneless. Rosetsu painted no less than 180 wall panels and sliding doors for 4 separate monasteries. The long fibrous and short feathery brushstrokes used in rendering the foliage are particularly reminiscent of Busson's style. In 1720, as a part of its Kyoho era reforms, the shogunal government lifted a ban on imported books, a development with profound artistic consequences throughout the country. Although Japanese artists had been exposed to the Western chiaroscuro and vanishing point perspective in the late 16th century, the use of Western pictorial techniques soon fell victim to the Tokugawa's xenophobic policies and died out. Renewed access to Western themes and styles, often by way of Chinese books, together with the public taste for novelty, spurred interest in illusionistic techniques among Edo printmakers in 1730s. In Kyoto, the impact of these developments was manifested 20 years later in the art of Maruyama Okayo, who was active from 1733 to 1795. He founded an enormously influential school of painting. Okayo was among the first artists to recognize these new modes of representing volume and space as more than amusing novelties. He learned one-point perspective and chiaroscuro, chiefly from the hand-tinted topographic prints produced in the Chinese city of Suzhou that reached Kyoto via Nagasaki. He initially adopted these techniques to create pictures of local and foreign scenes for use in stereoscopic devices that were very popular form of entertainment at fairs and carnivals. His celebration of scenic spots in Kyoto in this novel manner no doubt contributed to his initial success. The first exponent of realism and a native of a village in the province of Tanba. At the age of 17, he entered the studio of Ishida Yuti, a painter of the Kano school of Kyoto, where he acquired great proficiency in the handling of the brush. By a mere chance, his eyes were opened to a new aesthetic, or better, a new way of seeing that of Western art. Something has already been said of the increasing interest felt in everything Western during the first half of the 18th century. A peep show imparted by a curious dealer of Kyoto caught the fancy of the public, who was surprised and intrigued by unfamiliar landscape painted in perspective and chiaroscuro and optically magnified to paint of seeming real. The young Okayo must have taken a keen interest in this device, for the dealer commissioned him to enlarge repertory of these imported pictures by making copies in accordance with the same principles of European landscape and adding landscape views of Japan. These peep show pictures, Megane A, painted by Okayo about 1760, were a great success, and a considerable number of them are still extant. Resolutely departing from the conventional designs of the Kano school, Okayo profited by the experience thus gained and went to apply the principle of perspective and to embody other realistic elements in a scroll painted in 1765, consisting of a series of landscapes along the banks of the river Gyodo between Kyoto and Osaka. He made a point of basing his style on the direct study of nature. However, this concern for realism, or better for naturalism, was carried only to a certain point and no further. The real forms of objects were carefully conveyed by means of subtle drawing, and nuisances of ink and colors produced a striking effect of chiaroscuro. But to render space tangibly and convincingly in terms of depth and volume, following the rules of Western art, this was a conception utterly foreign to the Japanese painters of the 18th century, and they maintained the tradition of open, unlimited space peculiar to the art of the Far East. Another factor played its part in shaping the realistic style of Okayo. This was the renewed influence of Chinese painting penetrating into Japan by the way of Nagasaki. Located in the extreme southwest of the Japanese archipelago, this seaport was the country's sole point of contact with the outside world. Through Nagasaki, from the 17th century on, works of both Chinese and Western paintings filtered into Japan. A new Zen sect called Obaku Huangpo had been introduced by the Chinese colony of Nagasaki and propagated as far as Kyoto by the Chinese monk Itsunen Aijan, who came to Japan in 1644. Portraits of the patriarchs of the Obaku sect were painted in a curious style remarkable for the thoroughgoing realism of facial features. Local Japanese painters like Kita Genki followed these models, adding to them, it would seem, reminiscences of Western works brought to Japan by the Christian missionaries. The influence of Itsunen, himself an amateur painter, was brought to bear on official painters known as the Nagasaki school, whose works are characterized by a realistic, minutely detailed representation of objects. The arrival of Chinese artists in Nagasaki further speeded up the diffusion of Ming and Qing paintings, along with the idealistic style noticeable chiefly in the landscapes of the literary painters to dealt with presently. The realism of the bird and flower painters of the Ming period, both academics and independents, was introduced in a style somewhat eclectic by Shen Nanpin or Shen Chuan, who worked in Nagasaki from 1731 to 1733. The Japanese liked his detailed compositions with their meticulous brushwork and showy colors, and he soon had a number of imitators. For example, Kumashiro Shukoku, known as Yuhi. He was active from 1712 to 1772. This style, moreover, spread to Kyoto, Osaka region, thanks to the painter monk Kakutei, and even to Edo itself with the school of So Shishiki. The realistic or naturalistic tradition of Chinese painting obviously counted for something in the formation of Okayo's style. Even if a later testimony is accepted, according to which he severely criticized one of Shen Nanpin's composition for its inaccurate proportions. Due to the generous patronage of the Prince Abbot Yujo, superior of the great Imam in monastery, and to his own unremitting efforts, Okayo achieved a fully developed style of his own based on the objective study of forms. Several notebooks and sketch scrolls dating from 1770 to 1776, preserved in the National Museum, Tokyo, and in Nishimura collection, reveal the thoroughness and almost scientific precision with which he scrutinized plants and animals. Okayo practiced all forms of paintings, landscapes, flower pieces, animals, pictures, and figure paintings, from small and dainty pictures to large-scale compositions. In addition to the works of his maturity preserved in the Aman Inn is the scroll of fortunes and misfortunes, the peacock, etc. He left great many screen paintings intended for temples or well-to-do middle-class homes. For examples, the dragons in the Kanchi Inn temple, the pine trees in snow in the Nishimura collection, which was one of his last works. He also decorated the interior of many temples like the Kango-ji at Tanba, the Daijo-ju at Hogyo, and Koto-hira-gu at Sankui. The sheer abundance of his output and the technical mastery that remained unimpaired until his death are undoubtedly the marks of a great talent. As already said, Okayo excelled in flower and animal paintings, and the wooden doors of the so-called Okayo Pavilion offer a good example of these charming works. In 1784, he decorated the inner partitions of this building, an annex of the Migen Inn temple at Aichi. It has now been moved to the park of the National Museum, Tokyo. One of them figure two dogs, one white, the other brown, playing with blue morning glories. This work exemplifies his power of observation and his flawless draftsmanship. Few of his excellent works are discussed here. His hanging scroll, Pine Tree in Snow, in the collection of National Museum, Tokyo, is painted in ink and gold on silk, dated to 1765 shows Okayo's technical mastery and spontaneity of a youthful work. By a simple effect of line brush strokes on a background faintly heightened with gold and white of the silk serves to represent show on the tree and on the ground and conveys its full tactile quality, its lightness, softness and freshness. The pine needles are drawn with swift strokes of the brush, while shaded dabs of ink indicated the volume of the branches and trunk. The painting Riverbed at Shijio, dated to 1760, it is a hand-colored woodblock print and at present in the Nagasaki Prefectural Art Museum. In this bustling nocturnal scene designed for viewing a stereoscopic device, figures are silhouetted against the lantern-lit restaurants and theaters. An acrobatic performance dominates the background. Later, he skillfully applied many of these European principles to large-scale figure and landscape painting. An example of Pines in Snow, 1780, is a pair of 6-panel folding screens, ink and gold on paper, in the collection of Mitsuai Bunko, Tokyo. To create a sense of volume like that used in European paintings and print, Okayo employed a time-honored brush technique called mokotsu, boneless, in which ink washes rather than contoured lines are used to describe form. By shading forms on one side or on the outside, he was able to create contrasting areas of light and shadow that gave the illusion of volume, thus imparting even traditional bird and flower landscape and figural themes with a startling new tangibility. As usual, Japanese screen read from right to left. Here in this painting, the right screen is above and the left below. He produced scrolls and large screens combining in gold ground with majestic pines or peacocks on rocks in Chinese academic style or wisteria in Japanese style color wash. He taught his pupils to sketch directly from nature and produced some of his own most charming works in this genre. Many of his sketchbooks with their accurate drawings from nature have been preserved. Sketches of cicadas detail from his sketchbook of insects, ink and light colors on paper dated to mid-19th century. Okayo was probably the first Japanese painter to make studies from the nude. Soon he was applying realistic drawing and shading to big decorative screens. To these novel techniques was added the influence of Chinese brush painting that was coming into Japan. Like Western art by the way of Nagasaki, cranes and waves, it is a detail from a 6-panel folding screen, 18th century Kyoto, Japan, and at present in the collection of Kongoji, Japan. The result was a decorative style that was Kano in theme, design and basic manner, but with elements of Chinese brushwork and Western realistic shading and modeling. This brilliant aestheticism proved to be just what the taste of the new wealthy class demanded. Okayo's major work of the Hozo River screens in the Nishimura collection were enormously admired and set the style for a decorative realism in Japanese screen painting that has remained fashionable up to modern times. During the last decade of his life, Okayo and his studio received a number of commissions that would have once been awarded as a matter of course to the artists of the Kano school. These included cycles of painting for the sliding screens in temples and shrines in and around Kyoto, and even for institutions as far away as the island of Shikoku. Moreover, in 1789-90, Okayo and his students took charge of the renovation of the sliding screen paintings in one of the palaces of the imperial compound damaged by fire in 1788. Okayo may have been awarded this prestigious commission through his friendship with his elder brother of Emperor Kokaku. Okayo's careful sketches of flora and fauna brought a new empiricism to this traditional genre. His understanding of human anatomy, the result of sketching from life and attending dissections of cadavers, an unusual activity for an artist at the time, also influenced development of figural painting in Kyoto. His pictures of beautiful women, bijinga, have a sense of corporeality unique among the works of his era. However, while sketching after nature remained an important part of their artistic training, his followers tempered the scientific objectivity that was Okayo's personal hallmark with more delicate and sometimes sentimental quality that found great favor in Kyoto and Osaka, although it was less congenial to audiences in Edo. The tradition founded by Maruyama Okayo is generally called Maruyama Shijio School, Shijio being the quarter of Kyoto where Okayo's follower Matsumura Goshun and many of his disciples lived, and their combination of talents too came to be known as Maruyama Shijio School. Goshun belonged to a distinguished Kyoto family and had been employed for generations by the office of the mint. In the point of temperament, Goshun stood in relation to Okayo, much as had Kenzan to Korin. Like Ogata brothers, he took up painting and poetry as an avocation and became a professional only because of financial problems following the death of his father. In his youth, he studied under Buson, one of the first and most original painters of the Chinese literati manner, developing as a skillful painter of Hagya and also absorbing elements of the literati style. Though Goshun was a man of mere refined sensibility than Okayo, but after the death of Buson, he late in his life was increasingly drawn to the style of Okayo, who had become the leading artistic personality in Kyoto. Goshun retained the shading techniques developed by Okayo, but de-emphasized the use of perspective in favor of translucent colors and a more decorative handling of space. A painting, Hibiscus and Blue Heroine on a tree stump, dated to 1782, it is a hanging scroll, ink and colors on silk, is excellent both in poetic quality and in brushwork. This work is more indebted to Buson than to Okayo. The long, fibrous and short feathery brushstrokes used in rendering the foliage are particularly reminiscent of Busson's style. Goschen's another famous work is his landscape from the pair of 8-panel folding screen dated to 18th century and at present in the Tokyo National Museum. It combines the decorative realism of Okayo with the greater breadth of vision and subtlety of feeling inherent in the Chinese style. Here the picture elements, hills, streams, rocks, trees and thatched roofs drawn in the naturalistic manner of Okayo fade into the distance in a rainy atmosphere which effectively creates depth. Okayo and Goshun trained many talented artists in their studies. While most remained in Kyoto, others established their own studios in Osaka and Edo, adapting Maruyama Shijio themes and styles to local tastes. The other most individual of Okayo's pupil was Nagasawa Rohetsu, who was active from 1754 to 1799, who possessed a vision which is as fresh and vital today as it must have seemed to his contemporaries. From a warrior family, he changed his name in order to paint rather than be subject to official position. His first works were in the manner of Okayo, but after mastering Western techniques of perspective and chiaroscuro, he began to contribute to the eccentric and grotesque modes then fashionable. He worked in ink wash as well as in fine lines and colors on silk and paper, painting everything from fans to murals. In 1786, within 4 to 5 months, he painted no less than 180 wall panels and sliding doors of 4 separate monasteries. Traveling through Ku-Rosetsu, elephant and bull, second half of 18th century, it is a pair of 6-panel folding screens, ink and gold wash on paper, collection of Itsuko and Joy Price is a beautiful painting. The Itsukushima Shrine, 5th view of 8 views of Miyajima, Hiroshima. It is an album leaf, ink and colors on silk, dated to 1794. Is a bird's eye view rendered deftly in ink, sometimes very fine and dry, sometimes wet and diffused. The twisting covered walk and the main hall with its stage-like front for performing sacred dances, both raised on stilts from the water. It is twilight and stone and paper lanterns have been lit to dispel the misty gloom descending upon the pine-clad islet. The Maruyama Shijio's prominence in Kyoto art world is evident in the evolution of the Higashiyama Art Exhibition, one of Kyoto's major cultural events. Minagawa Keen, a noted Kyoto Confucian scholar and amateur literati painter and calligrapher, organized the first exhibition in the city's Higashiyama or Eastern Hills district in 1792. It was such a resounding success that it attracted contributors and art collectors from all over the country and continued to be held each spring and autumn until 1864. In 1794, the roster of participants included Gaikudo and his 2 sons, who exhibited a series of jointly brushed fan paintings. In 1796, there were 97 participants from all over the country. Among them, Kyoto artists of the Maruyama Shijio, Tosa and Kano schools, as well as independents such as Ito Jakuchu, whose works are in colors and ink monochrome and show barnyard fowl, vegetables, flowers and trees in elegant distortion. He combined foreshortening and perspective techniques with a flat, highly chromatic use of ink and brilliant colors. He turned his animal paintings into still life with a sharp wit, posturing the figures in an exaggerated manner, comically suggesting human behavior. Ito Jakuchu preceded Okayo as a realistic painter, calls for special mention. Born in Kyoto of a well-to-do family of grocers, he was able to devote himself exclusively to painting, being quite free of both economic and artistic trammels. At the Shokuji monastery, where he was a welcome visitor, he had the opportunity of studying a number of bird and flower compositions of the Shung and even Ming period. Jakuchu is known to have lived in a large house in Nishiki Street. He raised animals and birds in his park, among them peacock, parrot and various kinds of cocks. His cocks and cactus color on gold paper on the sliding doors of the Saifukuji north of Osaka is the fruit of his long research. The contrast of vivid colors is emphasized by the huge cactus, an expression of intense vigor in the cocks. From 1758 to 1770, Ito Jakuchu executed 30 large pictures of flowers and birds and fish, a pictorial essay in natural history which he presented it to Sokukuji. The complete set is now in the imperial collection. His original and a most bizarre, laborious painting technique is a double six-folded screen featuring a phoenix and an enormous white elephant, each surrounding by outlandish birds and animals. Jakuchu here has imitated mosaic painting, ink and color, impasto on paper belonging to mid-18th century. A prominent Edo artist, Tani Buncho, dated to 1763 to 1840, and several other painters from Osaka also contributed works. However, artists of Maruyama, Shijio and their affiliated studies monopolized later exhibition, confirming their status as the dominant school of painting in Kyoto.